Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Garage Biljon and to another episode on my 924 Turbo. In the previous episode, we replaced the gearbox mounts and I said I was going to do the motor mounts. And I had all intentions to do that, and I was actually making the video for replacing the motor mounts on this guy, and I failed miserably. It took me about 6 hours to fail. I put it all back together the way it was, and we went to Le Mans Classic on the old motor mounts. I know this can be done with the engine in the car. A lot of people are telling me it can't be done. I don't believe them because I know I did this 6 years ago. So I'm going to figure out a way to do the motor mount, and I'm going to show you how to do it so that hopefully all of you guys with turbos will no longer have to worry about removing the engine. This is a beast of a car to work on. So that'll come in the next episode. The road trip back and forth to Le Mans actually went down without any problems. I had a little bit of an issue with the idling mixture when I arrived in France. And I think the reason for that was just that the fuel that was in the car was a little bit stale. So it was hunting a little bit when I've put in new fluids. I think it was a little bit too rich. I fixed that within 1 minute, and one day I'll show you how to do all that stuff with the K-Jet, but not today. So basically, she was flawless. She behaved perfectly. We had a great drive. I don't drive toll roads, so we went all the way through the forests and the towns and cities of the countryside, which means I did about 1,900 kilometers back and forth. And the only thing that happened is I managed to blow a hole in the exhaust. So I think that's the first thing I want to diagnose. So let's get the car back in the air and then we'll see where that exhaust leak is. Alright, she's back up in the air on the quick checks, and that means we are ready to start inspecting the exhaust system. Now, I already know the problem is not in the back there. One, because I replaced that section about 6 years ago and it's in perfect condition. The front section I know has been welded in the past, so it might be there. It might also be the J pipe that runs sort of kind of there. Which is also not too bad if that's the problem. What I'm really worried about is that my exhaust manifold has cracked. They are extremely expensive, about €1,000 to buy, but that's just the start of it, because installing it is an absolute nightmare. You have to take the head off, so that is a whole can of worms I do not want to open. But I'm gonna have faith that it's not my exhaust manifold, that it's somewhere a little bit lower down, but we'll only find out when we get under the car. But before I do that, I actually wanted to just show you the trick with the spark plugs and why the turbo is so difficult. On a normally aspirated 924, the spark plugs sit on this side, but a turbo has a unique head just for this car, and they actually have a lot of stuff on this side. So you can see this is the fuel injectors, and that is a spark plug lead. Now, this spark plug, super easy to do. You can do this with any tool, no problem at all. But once you get to that one there, you can see it's directly under the boost pipe, and there are very few tools that can actually get to that spark plug. I have tried various combinations. It never really worked for me. The easiest way I found back when is to remove this charge pipe, and that's not a great idea, because as soon as you remove this thing, you can introduce vacuum leaks. So you want to try and keep this on the car. The last one as well, there's another one down here which is fairly okay to do, but then you have this guy in the back, which is also a disaster because you are hitting up against your distributor. So Porsche obviously knew this will be difficult, and they included a tool in your toolkit that looks like this. And I believe this even sits in a 911. And this tool has the perfect length and pivot angles to go down where that spark plug is. So you go at it from this angle and you can get that very difficult spark plug, and this one you can also get. You can literally just wiggle your way inside there. So if you do not have this tool in your tool set, go out and buy one. It's got a little piece of rubber in there so you can't lose your spark plug. This is a super investment because it took this job from being about a 2-3 hour job to being a 20-minute job. So go and find this. If you have a turbo, you can thank me later. With that tip given, I think it's time for us to start this car so you can hear what it sounds like. It's pretty horrid. So usually my turbo makes very little noise. It's actually a fairly quiet little car. The only thing you tend to hear is the turbo whistle, which is really addictive. But if I start this car for you now, checking for neutral, then you'll hear the noise. It's horrible. Can you hear that? I'll come outside. It's somewhere down there. It's a big hole. All right, so I think you can agree this is a horrible noise. It sounds like a tractor, which is terrible. It's not the way it should be. So I think I'm going to start by inspecting the top of the manifold, and then we'll get underneath the car and see what we can see there. All right, let's see. So what you're seeing here is the top of the manifold, and normally they tend to crack somewhere here at the front. Let me just see if we can get the focus on there. And I am not seeing anything untoward. They tend to crack in between these little pipes, which I'm not seeing. So I think my manifold is okay. So I think it's time for us to get underneath and see what we can find there. Before we continue, maybe it's a good idea for me to explain to you how a turbo setup works. So what you see here, this is the exhaust side of the turbo. So this is the hot side. Over there, you see a little piece of cast aluminium. That is the snail shell for the intake side. So that's the cold side of the turbo. And a turbo obviously always has a hot side and a cold side. This is the exhaust impeller being driven by exhaust gases. That is the intake impeller, which means it's sucking more cold air than it normally would if it didn't have a turbo. So these two things work together. There's a shaft in there that spins, etc., etc. What you see up here, that is the cast iron exhaust manifold, which is prone to cracking, especially when it becomes as old as mine is. So let's quickly inspect that and see if we can find a problem. Now, just a quick visual from down here, and obviously I can see a bit more than you guys, but I am seeing something that's worrying me, and that is this little line there. This manifold has been welded before. So I'm going to swing you around the exhaust pipe and see if we can get in there. Maybe zoom a little bit. And yeah, that is a hairline crack right there. I don't know if you guys can see it. I'll try and get even closer to it. There you go. I think you can see that hairline crack going from that nut all the way down, following that line. That is no good, but that is not the source of my noise. My noise is way louder than that. You probably won't even hear this hissing. So let's come back up. So you are looking at the exhaust manifold again. That's where the little hairline crack is. How this works is that manifold pushes exhaust gases through to the turbo, and it builds up a lot of pressure. And at the back of it, you'll see there's another pipe coming off it. This is called the J pipe. It's basically the J pipe because it forms a J in a Porsche 924 turbo. So that's at the back of the manifold, and this is where you go to your wastegate. So if there's too much pressure, because the turbo will spin indefinitely, so if it builds up too much pressure inside that manifold has a pressure regulator, which is this guy here, which is the wastegate. And on a 924 turbo, this is set at 0.8 bar. So if the pressure inside this pipe reaches 0.8 bar, then the wastegate will open and it'll actually dump exhaust via this little tube into the rest of the exhaust manifold. So a lot of people who tune these cars will up the spring rate on this guy, making it 1 bar, and then you can add an intercooler, and then you can get up to 200 and something horsepower in this car, which is quite good. But I have mine stock, so that's 0.8 bar. This is a J pipe. This is the pipe coming from the exhaust. You can also see the difference in diameter because this is the high flow side. This is the lower flow side. So this pipe looks okay to me. It's been welded here before, but I am not seeing anything that's worrying me. So I have a suspicion that it's over here or up there somewhere. And if I move the pipe, it seems to be quite good up there. I'm not seeing any weirdness about it, but I think over here I have found my culprit, because, yeah, look at that. This weld here has given up. That's no good. All right, so this is the source of the noise, without a doubt. I am also seeing cracks in this joint here, which might not mean it's leaking, but it's not great. All right, so I guess we have a plan of action. I need to take off this pipe. I need to get it welded. So the first thing we need to do is get some penetrating fluid on there. The crack on the manifold up there is not great, but I'm going to pretend it's not there because it's still fairly small, and hopefully that won't come and bite me later. But I don't want to start a third project at this point. I want this car to be just fine, so I'll put it away for a year and we won't talk about it. But I need to fix this because I've got an upcoming roadworthiness for this car and it will not pass with this exhaust. So not entirely unexpected, I managed to get one nut off safely. This one is slipping and this one is slipping as well. And if you guys look over there, that one is missing. So I have my little extractor socket on here, which I'm going to get onto this guy now. Hopefully that'll break it loose, because this is supposed to be a 12mm nut and it's no longer 12, but it's also not an 11. So this will be my saving grace, I hope, because I do not want to snap the studs off. Then I have to take out the wastegate, and I don't feel like doing that. So let's hope this guy does the job. Alright, so the 3 nuts that were remaining on these threads have been removed. For you it's been a couple of minutes. For me this has been a 3-day process, because this guy was really stuck on, and so was this one. So this was me coming in every couple of hours, putting some penetrating fluid on, seeing if it will break loose, and it won't. So this really took me a long time. I had to have a lot of patience, because I don't want to break these studs off. It's just a mess if you do, because then I have to pull out the whole wastegate, which I don't have the energy for. So I've only got 2 nuts left on the exhaust manifold side, which I'll get to now. And once I've got that, then I can pull the J pipe out, and then I'll go to a welding company to see if they can weld this for me. I'm not super confident that that's going to work, but I'll get them to tell me what they think is best. So let's get going on those last 2 nuts, and then we can pull the J pipe from the engine. Oh shit. Tell me you're out. Alright guys, I've run into a massive roadblock, and that is that these nuts, both of them, this one and that one, the person that worked on this area of the car the last decided to use nylock nuts, and a nylock nut does not work well with exhausts, because what you get is exactly what I've got here, is that the nylon evaporates away and you can no longer get the nut off the stud. The problem I have is I can't get any cutting tools in there. As you can see, this engine bay is extremely full. There is no way you can get to that. It's just, there's an oil filter here, a engine mount bracket here, bell housing here, and there are pipes all over the place. There is just no way you can get a cutting tool on there. So a good friend of mine, Paul, has actually recommended that I get one of these nut splitters, which I'm going to order up, and hopefully that'll arrive soon. So I guess what that means is that at this point I'm completely stuck. I cannot move forward. So on that bombshell and massive anticlimax, it's time for me to end this video. But as I said to you in the beginning of the video, working on 924 turbos is always extremely difficult. It's so full with all kinds of mechanicals in there. There's no room to maneuver. That's why these cars were so expensive to maintain back in the day. And I think this is why so many of them ended up on the scrap heap. But luckily my time is free. I can keep on working on this. So I'll go build up the courage again. I'll come back to this as soon as my tools arrive, and we will continue. But the next video will be on the 968 again, because I have a lot of parts that has arrived. So we can start doing the belt service. I can install the new wiring harness. So everything is ready for this guy to move on. So for now, this guy will go into the cooler, and next time we will be back on this one. Until then, goodbye.